Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to attempt replacing the timing chain in my 2010 Volkswagen Golf GTI. Now, a quick disclaimer before I get into the work here. This is by no means a tutorial, so don't expect me to tell you, oh, remove this bolt, and what torque spec to do it in, because that's not this kind of video. I just want to show you guys how much work is actually involved with this vehicle in doing the timing chain, so that way you can kind of gauge how much work it may be for you. And if you are going to do this at home, definitely use the factory OEM manual like I'm doing in this case, and that way it'll be a lot easy and smooth for you as well. So you may be familiar with this engine. This is the second generation Triple E 2-liter TFSI engine that was used in a lot of Audi and Volkswagen products. Now this one here is specifically the CCTA engine, and of course it's transverse, so it's mounted this way here in the Volkswagen because it's a front wheel drive vehicle, and right over here to the left is the timing chain. So a little bit different than when I worked on my Audi Allroad. It was actually here at the front because of course the engine was mounted differently, but yes, it should be still a relatively straightforward project. Okay, coolant reservoir is gone as well with the hoses, so now I have easy access to the engine mount here and these bolts holding it in. So first, before I take that off, I'm actually going to time the engine, meaning I'm going to set it to top dead center. So I've already done some work down here. I've actually just removed this liner right here that covers all this up, and of course the little tray underneath the vehicle at the front. So right in behind here we have to remove all this stuff here. So this, I think this is for your turbo cooler right here, that pipe there, and then obviously the accessory belt mounted onto this pulley right here, which is the crank. Believe it or not, those two marks are actually lined up. I know it kind of looks off, at least at this angle from the camera, but they are in fact in line. Another way to check to see if the engine's in top dead center is if you take out the coil and spark plug and put a really long screwdriver in there, and of course spin it around, and at the highest point that the screwdriver reaches, you'll know that it's in top dead center. In order to take this crank pulley off, of course, I have to remove this bolt, and I have triple checked that this is in time, of course, with that mark over here that I said earlier. So now in order to take this off, I have to use a special tool. And that special tool is this, which is one of these crank pulley holder tools. I don't really know the technical name for it, but basically this is a really long tool, like it's got a really long arm to it. And you can buy this as part of a kit. I know places like FCP Euro, which I'm not sponsored in any way, they do sell these, and also you can get cheaper kits online, maybe just through Amazon or something. But this one here, I like this one better. It's got a more of a hold to it, it's a bit longer, and also you use this tool, and now it's placed on top of there with the pulley off here. I'm going to use the old crank bolt right here. Mind you, these are not to be reused again when you install it. These are a torque to yield. So I'm going to use this and this washer like so, and put that on, and just like that, that bolt is holding in everything in time. So now I can remove this lower cover with all these T30s here. The next thing to do before I remove the upper timing chain cover is to remove these Torx right here, those three right there holding in that, and then there's one further down that I'll have to remove in order to get this dipstick out. Now you have two options to remove all these 5 bolts here holding in the upper timing chain cover. You do have a T30 or a 10 mil, and to be honest, I'm going to use a 10 mil. This is what the upper timing chain looks like. You have a little plastic guide right here, and then of course you have your bridge here, and then of course the chain on either cam here. Okay, so it's getting dark out, so it's kind of hard to see everything now, but yes, again, the upper timing cover is off, and so is the lower timing cover. Now what I've done, and having done a job like this before on my A4 Allroad, is I've actually made some marks here with some white paint. Sorry, it's a little dark to see, but basically I made a paint marking on the sprocket there and one on the actual engine, so that way I know it's in top dead center. So if I have to take off that sprocket, I'll know exactly where it goes. And I also made some paint markings up here on the camshafts on the left side and the right side. So now I can finally remove this cam bridge here and then take that off and then put in the cam locks, so that way it will lock this, and then I'm ready to take the chain off. And yes, for those of you wondering, I did manage to pull out that metal screen because that can cause problems, especially starvation of oil in parts of the engine if you don't remove it. Now this next part is not really necessary, but I am using a specialty tool here that will compress the tensioner so that way I can take it out nice and easily. Again, not necessary, but I figured I'd just use it as good practice. As I forgot the original extended bolts that came with the tool, I had to improvise by using washers, so don't judge me. In order to remove the balance shaft tensioner, you actually need to use a 27mm socket, but unfortunately you have to grind it down a little bit in the edge so that way you can fit it in where it can actually reach the tensioner. Hello, you join me the following day. Basically I left off with starting to remove the lower balance shaft chain here. So I did take out the tensioner, which again was that 27mm that I actually had to shave down a little bit to get it to fit in this little area right here. And then now I'm ready to take off all these guides and then the chain. So I have the balance shaft chain removed, and as you can see here, I have made little white marks on all these sprockets so that way you can see where they should be for timing. Now this one is really simple, it just lines up with that little bolt there, and then this side's a bit more interesting because there is a marking on this sprocket and then this one up here. So basically this one here has one on the outside and then one little gear further inside, which has two markings on it, two indents, which have to align with the one on this top sprocket right here. So basically you have to turn this usually about 8 times for the two markings on this sprocket to line center with this sprocket right here, the marking on that one. So I have turned it at least 3 times and it fortunately just lined up. I got really lucky. But most importantly though, at the end of the day, that those are aligned and that this is aiming at this bolt here, which I know you can't really see in that corner. So in my left hand is the old balance shaft chain, and in my right hand is the new one. Now my eyes might be deceiving me a little bit, but I do think that the new one is definitely not as long as the old one, but these normally don't stretch, but you know, it could just be a me thing. So the new balance shaft chain is installed, so all that's left to do is put the new guides in and then the tensioner. The new guides are in with new hardware and a new tensioner, and it's all torqued to spec. And not to mention that there is some assembly loop on the new guides, that way so when it starts, it should be rather easy. So the next part will be more fun. That'll be the timing chain itself, which should be rather straightforward. So can you tell which one's the new one? That's right, it's on the right, this side here. This is the old one on the left. Now these do stretch. These timing chains are pretty notorious for stretching. This one's not probably the worst one I've seen. I've seen photos of really bad ones, but I'd say there's definitely about 2mm at least worth of stretch. And then use my paint markings. Now I just double checked that these cams are in spec, meaning that they have a certain distance from this center right here. I believe it's 61 to 64mm from the center of this little point right here to the mark on the cam. And then from this cam all the way to this cam, it's between 124 and 126mm. So I did check those. Those are both good. I will triple check them, of course, when everything is 100% ready to go. Okay, so this side's good. This is perfectly on the mark with the chain and that mark I have on the engine there. Of course, I will double check everything. But this side here is a little bit different. This is actually off by 1 tooth, so it should be over just one more to the right. But I will have to adjust that later as I release this cam here from the lock and actually put it on the actual tooth. So now I'm going to go to the bottom. Also, the mark down here on this part of the chain is in line with that little mark on the sprocket, so we're good to go down here too. Okay, now it's just time to get the guides in, and then once that's done, we'll be pretty much ready to go. Okay, because it was a bit dark when I was filming taking out the tensioner, I just wanted to show you guys the old one here. Now I think this is actually the older style, because this one looks quite different than the new one here, which I know is a newer style because this is also in my all-road when I put that in there. So I think this is maybe a replacement, because of course the original one I don't think would have lasted 259,000 kilometers. So I'll put the new one in and hopefully that will last a bit longer. So everything's torqued down now. So all the guides have been torqued down, and I pulled the tensioner pin here so that way it can let go. And I did verify that these marks are still in time and that they still are in the correct distance from each other, meaning it's a 61 to 64 millimeters from here, and then about 124 to 126 to this point from this side. So all that's left to do now is just put on the lower timing cover here, and we'll do that right now. The top timing chain cover is on, and so is the bottom timing cover, so that's all torqued down. And then now it's just time to put on the crank pulley, but of course I can't reuse this bolt because it is a torque to yield, meaning it's sort of a one-time use. So I will be taking this off and then putting on a new bolt with the crank pulley. Okay, we are back out on the road with the GTI, and boy, there's a sigh of relief, because having those timing chains done has made me actually want to drive the vehicle again, because for the longest time I wouldn't drive it because I was too paranoid that it was just going to explode at any point. So therefore, it's done now. I'm a lot happier, and I'm really glad I checked the timing chain stretch before I even bought the vehicle, so that way I knew what I was getting myself into. And you know, having done it before on my A4 all-road, you know, when I had that, it wasn't the end of the world. Yeah, it's a bit of a tedious task, but it's nothing that no one else can really do, especially if you have a repair manual and a couple specialty tools that Audi requires. When I first checked the timing stretch on the engine, it was at about -4.9, and then after replacement, it was at about -0.2, which is, you know, nothing really. I mean, it's zero basically. So that is perfectly within specs. And I can tell that the engine, you know, not that it was ever really that bad, but it just seems healthy overall. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video of me replacing the timing chain on my Marxus Golf GTI, and that if you're going to do a job like this, you could definitely do it. Don't be scared. Just have a repair manual and a couple basic hand tools and maybe the odd specialty tool, and you'll be fine. And on that note, if you did enjoy today's video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and also consider subscribing so that way you don't miss any future videos like this, especially on the GTI, and also car reviews and other projects on my channel. And until next time, take care. Bye now. God, I love that sound.